The energy in the room is palpable, and we want to keep that energy up throughout the night. So please make sure you grab a seat, because we don't want you standing, but we love that it's standing room only. I'll start with a simple introduction. My name is Zincle Asamoah. I am a journalist and anchor at NBC News and a correspondent, and it is a delight to be with all of you tonight. Of course, we're here for three things, and the words that came to mind for me are connect, be curious, and be current. Can we say that together? Connect, curious, and current. What do I mean by that? Connect. You were just doing it. Mingle with the people in the room because there are so many. So if we can pause, turn to your neighbor, say hello, say your name, introduce each other. Not too long, not too long. Love that. I promised you there would be opportunities to mingle, and there will be a lot to stay connected. We're also staying current. By that I mean we're going to be present. So while we ask you to silence your phones, we encourage you to use them. Use social media. The handle is @WomenForWomen, and there's a hashtag Women Lead Peace. What's the hashtag? One more time, Women Lead Peace. Great, so I love that there are phones, please use them. I'm @SimplyZincle as well. And then we wanna stay curious, so please keep questions in mind. We're gonna have a lot of panel discussions, and you're gonna hear from an incredible lineup. Among the speakers, Delaney Steele, Executive Vice President of Ross Stores and Women for Women International's U.S. Board of Advisors Chair and International Board Secretary. Feel free to give a wave when I say your name. Rima Saleh, Women for Women International Board Member. Leymah Gbowee, Nobel Peace Laureate and founder president of the Gbowee Peace Foundation, Africa. You'll also be hearing from Dr. Anino Amua, Managing Director of Avandis Consulting in France and the founder of 100 Women at Davos. Maria Kasumbi, Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships at Humanity United. And Trisha Rorty, philanthropist and longtime champion of Women for Women International. We also have a good number of distinguished guests who I don't want to miss, so please, you can join me in welcoming Päivi Koneisto, UN Women Chief Peace, Security, and Resilience. Dame Didi Wolson-Jack, head of the civil service in Nigeria. His Excellency Joseph Donnelly, U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See. His Excellency Archbishop Gabriel Kacha, representative of His Holiness, the Pope of the United Nations. And His Excellency Martin Fraser, Irish Ambassador to Great Britain, and we've got two more. Her Excellency Yassine Fall, Minister of Justice for the Republic of Senegal, and Her Excellency Lesotho Chombo, Minister of Youth and Gender Affairs for the Republic of Botswana. Can we please welcome all of those guests? We have a lot of incredible people in the room, and that includes you. Notably, it has been 25 years since the UN Security Council passed Resolution 1325. That formally recognized women's vital role in security around the world and world peace. Our intention tonight is to honor that milestone, but also talk about how much further we have to go collectively. And I said it, right? I'm a journalist. I report on some of the hardest issues, not just in the United States, but in the world. And there are so many conflicts today. Among the deadliest, Ukraine, Sudan, and more recently, the war with Iran. Women and girls are so often, if not always, at the heart of so many of these conflicts, though they're not always at the table. According to the PRIO Center on Gender, Peace, and Security, over 600 million women around the world live less than an hour from a conflict zone. Just think about that for a minute. Less than an hour from a conflict zone. That's why these conversations are both important and urgent. So tonight, we want to talk about the enormous difference that women can make in their communities. We're going to honor those who are advancing peace throughout the world. And a lot of that has to do with Women for Women International. But remember our three words, they are too connect, stay current, and stay curious. What are we doing? I might need to add confidence because that was a little weak. Let's try again. We're going to stay connected, be curious, and stay current. Thank you for being engaged with me. So to start us off tonight, I want to invite Delaney Steele, Executive Vice President of Ross Stores for Women International's U.S. Board of Advisors Chair and International Board Secretary. Please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you, Zinkley. As Zinkley said, this moment feels particularly urgent. A new war and thousands of more women and children caught up in violence. So I want to start by telling you a little bit about Women for Women International and what we do to help women in conflict zones. So Women for Women International works in some of the most dangerous places to be a woman: Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Nigeria, Palestine, South Sudan, the list goes on. But what's so inspiring to me is that even in these very challenging conflicts, women can go from barely surviving to actually thriving. The approach that we take is unique. It's holistic, and it's multifaceted, and it can completely transform a woman's life. Let me tell you about it. In our 12-month Stronger Women, Stronger Nations program, we focus on the most marginalized women in a community. We bring 25 women together in a group, and they meet weekly to learn how to earn and save money, improve their health and well-being, influence decisions in their home and community, and connect to networks for support. What really kind of blows me away, though, is that the consistency of meeting together with that group to learn and support each other and to become friends and business partners is part of the glue that keeps the impact going even after the program is officially over. And women who go through our program also learn the skills to mediate and resolve conflict. They go out and lead changes that bring peace to their communities. The first time I saw the program, I was telling some of you before, was 20 years ago. I went to Rwanda, and I met women at the beginning of the program. They were very quiet. They were very scared. I learned that some of them had actually barely left their houses or even spoken since the genocide. And then, later in the week, I saw several groups of women who were at their graduation. Those women were singing and dancing and talking about the businesses that they were starting. It was really remarkable. Not least because the women in those groups were actually mixed ethnicities, were Hutus and Tutsis together, and they had gone into the program skeptical and afraid, and they had left the program as friends. As a business person, I was initially drawn to Women for Women because I like data, and the data really demonstrated the impact of the program. So as one example, when women go into the program, they, on average, last year made $14 a month, and they graduate making $40 a month, which is about 3 times. And the ROI on all sorts of other attributes is also really impressive. But really, as a fellow human being, what keeps me motivated in this work, and I'm sure all of you share this feeling, is that the program brings women a feeling of self-worth, of confidence, and of joy, even in places where it can be really hard to think that joy can ever exist again. Now, we also work in areas where we can't yet do a 12-month program because the war is still so active. And in these areas, when a conflict breaks out, we respond working through local partners who are already on the ground and connected with women with things like food, blankets, feminine hygiene kits, and importantly, mental health services. to help deal with the trauma of war. We leverage our expertise working with women in other conflict zones into these active areas by responses that are really women-centered. So, for example, what I mean by that is, as we all know, sexual violence and conflict is widespread. Unfortunately, Women for Women International has many decades of experience working with women who have survived this horrific crime. So all in all, we've helped more than 615,000 women in 17 conflict countries to really determine their power and determine the course of their lives. So what I think is most amazing and about Women for Women, and also about so many of you I talked to before this program, is that Women for Women and the work that many of you are doing really proves that you and we can make a difference even in situations where there are the most unthinkable examples of cruelty and aggression. Our work together has never been more important. Thank you.
Delaney, thanks so much. I now want to invite Rima Salah to share a little bit about her role in coining the Women, Peace, and Security Framework a whole 25 years ago. Rima is the former Deputy Executive Director of UNICEF and former Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General, UN Mission in the Central Republic and Chad. She now serves at Women for Women's International as a board member. Please join me in welcoming her.
Excellencies, honored guests, it is a great honor and privilege to participate in this high-level convening, 25 years of impact, women, peace, and security, alongside many personalities. Last year, in March, thousands of women gathered in New York to participate in the 69th Commission on the Status of Women. On the same occasion, they celebrated the 25th anniversary of the Security Council Resolution 1325, adopted by the UN Security Council in October 2000. This landmark resolution changed history, as it is unprecedented that world leaders and the international community recognize that the key contribution are crucial role of women in the prevention and resolution of conflicts, peace negotiation, peace building, and particularly peacekeeping. In retrospect, it is important to examine why a broad civil society movement in collaboration with UN agencies, including UNIFEM, which is now UN Women, UNDP, and UNICEF, and others, brought this agenda to the international community. This initiative was driven by them witnessing the profound impact of wars and conflicts on societies. Such crises disrupt the social fabric, compromise the foundation of institutions, and lead to destruction of critical productive systems. In these vulnerable situations, while women and girls face increased risks and heightened vulnerabilities, women consistently rise to the occasion to protect their families and bring peace to their community. In West Africa, during very difficult times, and I witnessed this, I was there, women took to the streets to protest the lack of security in the region. They called upon their political leaders to ensure the cessation of all hostilities across regions. In the Middle East, women have engaged actively and alongside men in peaceful protests breaking through cultural barriers, they marched in the streets, demanding social and political justice. And in other regions, women also marched for peace. Yet, the contribution of women to social and political transformation and peace remained unrecognized. Excellencies, honored participants, in 25 years since the adoption of UN Resolution 1325 has been essential to advancing the women, peace, and security agenda across the world. Great progress and achievements have been made at the normative, strategic, and operational level. At the normative level, the UN Security Council has adopted 6 additional resolutions on women, peace, and security. An important one is Resolution 1820. It recognizes sexual violence as a weapon and tactic of war. It declares that rape and other forms of sexual violence can constitute a war crime. A special representative of the Secretary General on Sexual Violence in Conflict was appointed to monitor and report on the situation to the Security Council quarterly and hold the perpetrators accountable. Excellencies, honored guests, the most significant achievement has been the implementation of the Women, Peace, and Security resolutions at the local level. The process was facilitated through a localization effort and the adoption of national action plans. We call them the NAPs. These initiatives served as a tangible force for positive change in communities, placing local women at the center of peace and security. And I'm happy to say that we have now almost 120 action plans around the world. We should express our gratitude to the international, national, and local organizations for their valuable contribution to this great accomplishment. And many of them are here. Please, let's honor them today. As we continue our journey for peace during these devastating times, where millions of women and their families are trapped in wars, in conflicts, under occupation and displacement. Excellencies, distinguished guests, we must amplify the voices of these women so that they resonate throughout the world in the conference rooms of the United Nations, in the parliament chambers. Let them tell their stories of loss of children and sacrifice, and their determination to build peace at the local and national level. We must unite our strength, international, national, and local organizations, and elevate our voices in treating our governments, our policymakers, to uphold the rights of women everywhere and their inclusion in all peace efforts. We must appeal to the international communities for increased political and financial commitment toward the empowerment of local women. Their support is essential during humanitarian response now and throughout the recovery process. In doing this, they should uphold human rights, and they should uphold their obligations to the international humanitarian law. Finally, we must all rise together to build peace and justice in this troubled world. The time is now, and we are stronger together. We are all accountable. Every one of us is accountable. So let us raise our voice and say, stop wars and conflicts. Thank you very much.
Rima Salah, thank you so much. A powerful message. The time is now. Next up, I am honored to invite Leymah Gbowee, founder and president of the Gbowee Peace Foundation Africa, as our keynote speaker tonight. Leymah is a women's rights campaigner and a renowned Liberian peace activist who rallied women to pressure leaders into ending Liberia's civil war. She was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2011 for her work. Please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you. It is an absolute joy to be here this evening. First, let me congratulate my friend, sister, and partner in crime, Thelma Ikia Solanke. It is a big thing, the first Black, first African taking over Women for Women International. It's huge. And if you don't know anything about Thelma and I, to all of her colleagues at Women for Women International, if you see me in your office acting like I'm the boss, that's because I'm her twin. So whatever achievement she has is also mine. I want to say thank you to the board for allowing me to be here. As I was contemplating what to talk about, I decided that, and thank you, Madam Salah, because you took us through really and truly the journey of the 1325 agenda. 26 years ago, almost 27 years ago, a young activist from Liberia went to Ghana for an event. And this would be one of the first times that she's in a space with a lot of women. And the meeting started, and it was a beautiful first day of the meeting. And then at night, the organizers decided it's time for us to go and socialize. You know how these things happen. So we were told that we were going to a club. And this young activist is carrying her own trauma, dons a jeans, t-shirt, and a baseball cap. And they get to the club and they say, oh no, you're not allowed to enter with the baseball cap. So she sits in the car to wait for everyone else so that they'll go back, not feeling bad at all because she really didn't want to be there. Sitting next to her was a prim and proper Nigerian, well-dressed. I think you all know where this story is going. But from the afternoon, there was zero interaction. So I felt like, okay, she's snobbish. She thinks she's it. And we would sit in this car and not speak to each other. So we sat for a while, and she goes, I've always intimidated her anyway. You're from Liberia? I said, yes. And then she started telling me about this amazing work that she wanted to start in the region, the Women Peace Building Network. I didn't like her. I didn't like anything she had to say, but I loved the vision. And the reason why I loved the vision is because we were at a place in our region where every country was faced with some kind of crisis. Liberia was burning, Sierra Leone was burning, Cote d'Ivoire was on edge, Guinea, and all of our socialization in our individual countries have been that women should stay out of peace processes as peace was seen as a male domain. Men make war, men should make peace. And so this whole idea of a women peace building network was very exciting. I went back to Liberia with the concept, took it on, even before 1325, we started this work. And as we started, then 1325 came. But one of the things that I recognized as we started this work, and is related to the impact of 1325, is that we had a blueprint. So the way I describe it is I'm the rough soldier, boots on the ground, and Thelma is the intellectual, writing, thinking, dreaming. I'm the one who's not ashamed to cause trouble. And she's the one who's very shy, and she'll say, I don't know why God punished me with a friend like you. But we started this work, and we moved. I went back to Liberia with the concept. And what we did as very young women in our region, and this is not to toot our horn, because the history is there and the records are there. We took that concept, and then 1325 came, and we localized it long before anyone started talking about National Action Plan. So in Liberia, we started a peace process that fitted our context. Sierra Leonean women started a peace process that fitted their context. And then what we would do every year is we would come together and share our experiences of how we were unrolling peace in our different countries. So we started at the local level, and we recognized that even at the local level, we were able to do peace in a way that no expert could come to tell us how to do peace. I'll give you one example of Liberia. So then it's time for disarmament in 2003. This is 3 years after 1325. There's no consideration about the women on the ground, no consideration about what we had to do. A U.S. general was appointed in Liberia as the Secretary General Special Representative, Jack Paul Klein. If you ever remember him, he talked big talk. And they came and said, oh, we're going to do Liberia like we did Kosovo. We get those boys and girls in. We're going to knock things off the ballpark. And before you know it, everything will be settled in this country. So they started a process of disarmament with zero information to a population of young soldiers who could not read. Their way of information dissemination was putting flyers in a helicopter and dropping them down in villages. So the one day of symbolic disarmament came, and all hell broke loose. Thankfully, we had been practicing for 3 years. We stepped in, we took over, we went to him, sat with him, and said, this is how you did everything wrongly. We have the strategy. And the reason why I'm saying this is because there was an insistence on our part to ensure that peace and security processes in our region was done from the local level. Beyond that, as we shared experiences, we recognized that we had to do some regional work. Côte d'Ivoire was about to happen. Elections were about to happen in 2010. And we got together and decided that we needed to go in. We went into Côte d'Ivoire. So I'm taking you all on a journey. We came from local to regional. We went into Côte d'Ivoire and we met with the First Lady at the time, Simone Gbagbo. And without fear, we sat with her and said, these are our analysis. And this is where we think you all will go wrong. And this is what is going to happen in your country. If you do this, if you do this, and if you do that. 3 months later, the crisis started in Côte d'Ivoire. 6 months later, we gathered again, and there was not a single way that women were involved, even though 1325 was in full swing. So then there's an ECOWAS summit for heads of state. We go to Nigeria without any invitation. We print T-shirts. I'll come to the low budget part. We print T-shirts with our flags, and we walk into the Transcorp Hilton. And as we're walking, every delegation that saw a woman with their country flag on the T-shirt stopped and say, what are you all doing here? So we're about to be arrested by the Nigerian government because we had come. There was a huge protest outside. Women who were going to work were stopping their car to join the protest. So long story short, we go to talk to President Sirleaf, and she's telling us, we said we came, we want just 1 minute, Madam President, to let the Ivorian women speak at the summit. And they said it's never been done in the history of ECOWAS that civilians speak in front of the heads of state. And we say, please, please, please. She said, who are my allies? President Ward. They started naming all these presidents. She gets on the phone with them. We go into that summit, and the 5 minutes turned to 15 minutes, and the women of Cote d'Ivoire were able to make a case to the heads of state. A week later, we saw the intervention. At the international level, we started writing. Way before, I hated writing. Every time Thelma would say, Lema said, let's write, and I'll be like, Thelma, write, I will edit. And she said, oh God. But at the international level, we're able to shape some of the different things. I remember 1820. There were just few of us civil society actors in the room at Wilton Park. And we were able to stand in front of generals and parliamentarians and speak truth to power. So when we talk about 25 years of 1325 and impact, I know in the current geopolitics of our world, it's easy to say we've gone back. But the question is the glass half full or half empty? I choose to see it half full. Because what women have been able to achieve in terms of the implementation of 1325 is something for the history books. So where are we now? This is not the moment for us to be downtrodden, feeling sad about all of the wars. Because trust me, in the 90s, in the early 2000s, it felt the same way for those of us who were in our different regions. We tore our wrappers. We didn't have budgets. We had no money. We used to scratch our heads on how we would do stuff. If we had to walk, we walk. If we had to fast because we didn't have money to buy water and soda, we did that. But the essence of peace, the burden for peace in our world today cannot be overstated. Each and every one of us in this room know that we need to stand up and do something for peace. It should not be about money because money never stops us from making the gains. And I want to take you back, look at West Africa. The stats of countries that have gone to war and relapse is everywhere else but West Africa. And the one lesson that I learned from the impact of the peace and security agenda is that when you localize your work, it stays longer than when experts fly in to do the work. Expats don't necessarily translate to experts. So let's look at the future. I think one of the reasons why we're successful is because we created spaces for dialogue. No one is investing in dialogue today. Yesterday, when I got to the Homeland Security, the guy asked me, what are you coming to do? I'm usually not the one to say, oh, I won the Nobel Peace Prize. We just chat and chat and chat. But in this current situation, if I have to carry my medal, I will carry it with me. He said, so what are you coming to do? I say, I'm going to speak at the UN. I have different meetings. He said, so do you work with the UN? No. Do you speak? No. Are you a lecturer? Well, but I won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2011. And then he asked me a question. He said, how do I contribute to peace? I said, regardless of how you feel about someone's politics or how they look, their identity, they too have a story. Have a listening ear. Dialogue with them. I said, do you recognize that the world that we live in today, people are talking at each other and not with each other? We need to bring dialogue back into the room. We cannot continue, understate the investment in women peace and security work, but that investment should be at the local level. Because women at the local level, they have creativity, they know exactly what is needed for them. So yes, whilst we are investing in everything here, let's put a lot of our investment down there. The third thing, we have a lot of documentation on best practices. And I will say this and take my seat. Woman for Woman International got lucky because you have one of the best in the field of peace and security as the head of your entity. As we look forward to the next 25 years, let us not grow weary. Because again, we need to not think of peace as ending wars. Peace is not just the absence of war. Peace is the presence of conditions that give dignity to all. And that is the task for all of us. If you sit in your offices, think, how am I giving dignity? If you're in a community, how am I giving dignity? In a church, how am I giving dignity? Because the strategy we used 25 years ago for peace building may not be the same strategy. But dignity, justice, and human rights is always the strategy. Let's move forward to the next 25 years. I thank you all.
Leymah Gbowee, thank you so much. I told you tonight is about being connected, being curious, staying current. At risk of eating into my own panel time, I'd love if we just take a minute, close our eyes, and just soak in what we received. Stay current in this moment, if you'll join me. Thank you. Women survivors of war, women have shown us what peace can look like and pursuing it can look like. We have a short video featuring women answering a simple but profound question. Why is it important to include women in peace building? Let's watch.
Imagine a world where women make the peace deals.
A world with less violence. And when conflict does break out, it's not fought over women's bodies.
A world where girls go to school, where women have rights, jobs, leadership.
Nations grow stronger, more prosperous. Everyone benefits.
If women were the peacemakers, just imagine.
At Women for Women International, we're not waiting for that world to exist. We're building it right now. For more than 3 decades, working with women survivors of war to rebuild their lives, women have shown us what peace really looks like.
It's the Peace Sisters in Nigeria, confronting violence and breaking up fights in their town.
It's the Mother of Aid, resolving conflict between civilians and soldiers with guns in Yei.
It's the woman who once sat quietly and now lead group discussions and carry others with them in Iraq.
The evidence is clear. Women play a vital role in seeking peace. We did it in Syria.
We know these are small-scale efforts, but they don't have to be. They shouldn't be.
Because the number of women being killed, assaulted, and displaced by war is rising.
And more than 600 million women live less than an hour from a conflict zone. But support for women and aid for those trapped in conflict is at an all-time low.
We've learned that when women are at the table, peace deals are more than likely to last. But women need your support to get there. So if you want to end conflict and bring long-term, sustainable peace across the world, we need to invest in women.
Invest in women.
استثمروا في النساء.
Let's stop imagining and make peace a reality.
It's just simple.
I'd now like to invite the following women to the stage.
Imagine a
Dr. Anina Amuwo, Managing Director of Avandis and Consulting in France and the founder of 100 Women at Davos, a community of impact-focused women leaders founded alongside the World Economic Forum. Her work on leadership focuses on gender equality, the corporate world, entrepreneurship, emerging technologies, and sustainability. Thank you so much for joining us. Maria Kasumbi, Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships at Humanity United, leading engagement with philanthropic peers with a background in human rights and women's rights advocacy. Maria has published in Just Security and Africa journals online. It's good to have you here. And Trisha Rorty, philanthropist and longtime champion of Women for Women International. She's engaged with the organization since 2002, supporting women survivors of war through long-term partnership and advocacy more than 2 decades. She's corresponded with over 30 women through the Stand With Her program. Thank you all for joining me. So just to set the scene for a minute, we have about 15 minutes to talk here, me asking the questions. And then I said, stay current, stay curious. I'll toss it back to you all, just for a couple questions so that I can respect our time. So just to jump in, Trisha, I'd love to begin with you. You have been a supporter of Women for Women for over 2 decades. I learned you have corresponded with more than 30 women survivors of war as part of the Stand With Her program. I wonder, why have you continued to engage with this organization, but also what have you learned from the women you've been in touch with?
Is this on? Okay, great. Thank you so much for that question. I can tell you how I got started in 2002. I found inspiration somewhere where a lot of Americans were finding inspiration at the time, which was the Oprah Winfrey Show. Love her. She had on the founder of Women for Women, Zainab Salbi. And Zainab described the program, and I was in awe of how the program managed to support women in war-torn countries. And it really touched my heart because Zainab talked about how the program didn't just support women in the present moment, it empowered them economically so that they could earn financial independence through learning business skills, life skills, and what their legal rights are. And so I became a supporter in 2002. But then what really had the biggest impact on me was writing the letters back and forth with the women that I supported. It was there that I felt deeply impacted by the connection that I was making with these women. They told me their stories, they told me about their families, and they told me about their hope for the future. And I found that the common thread with all of these letters from women in all different countries was this feeling of joy. And that really surprised me because I was thinking these women experienced trauma and violence and they were living in very difficult situations. Yet their letters continue to express this feeling of joy for being part of such an incredible program. And then I felt that joy, and that kept me coming back year after year when each woman graduated after her 12 months with her life skills and her brighter future. I thought, well, who can I start corresponding with again. And that went on, and then I was very fortunate, like Delaney, I traveled to Rwanda in 2019 with my daughters, and then I got to meet the women in the program there. And as Delaney mentioned, the feeling of joy when you meet the graduates, knowing that there's a better future for them, it's just something that I will continue to support, and I'm proud to have been a part of this since 2002 now.
Thank you. And I appreciate that Lema pushed us all to be optimistic about the state of things. And as a journalist, my job is to be a little skeptical, pessimistic, you could say. So Maria, I want to pose a question to you because we are also in this landscape where there has been a dramatic cut in funding, particularly in the West, to efforts like what Women for Women is doing. How do you continue to work in that space? But also practically, I think a question comes up, maybe by every generation, how do we make sure the money that is raised goes to the people it's meant for?
Thank you so much. I think when I was listening to Lema and I was feeling a bit of really hope, just listening to you, I was feeling a bit of hope. Because in this moment, you rightfully say, funding, global funding, development funding has really gone down. But we also need to take a step back and also acknowledge that funding, even just for peace building, has literally always been low. If you look at the statistics, evidence is super important. If you look at the statistics, less than 1% is going to peace building. Now let's go a step further. If you look at funding from philanthropic organizations going to women-led organizations, you know how much it is? 1.9%. We take another step back. How much of that 1.9% is going to grassroots organizations? You had the story of them organizing with no money, no resources, no support. Which begs me to the question, I know you're talking about this moment right now and the declining resources, is why is it within the philanthropic spaces that we are not mobilizing funding and mobilizing resources towards women organizations, women leaders, and also broadly peace building? Because peace building is super important, especially now where the first thing we want to do is invasion. The first thing we want to do is kidnapping a couple of individuals. That's the first thing. So I think, first thing first, we have to really emphasize the importance of peace building. Then we also have to emphasize and mobilize within our philanthropic peers, how do we move resources towards women and women-led organizations. The one thing is, I know we only have 5 minutes, is the one thing which is super important, and if you want to change minds and you want to change behavior, is we need to invest in diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And I am going to say DEIJ. We are not going to step back. We're not going to step back. But if we, as philanthropy-centered DEIJ, we will start to ask these fundamental questions. Who is missing? Who should we move resources? Who within philanthropy exists? Do we have people like Thelma in these spaces? When we have people like Thelma in these spaces, then you start to see money and resources moving towards those who are most impacted, because we have them existing in these spaces. We start to see more resources going towards Global South. We start to ensure within our philanthropic programs, who is designing our programs? So this is a fundamental question, and I think the key thing is, how do we change our minds and behaviors to start to value and center women, start to center those who are most impacted? So I think as those who are in philanthropy, we have a job to do. We have to mobilize our peers on the importance of peace building, but the importance of also of investing in women.
Thank you. And it's helpful to hear, right, the individual giving, the philanthropic approach. Dr. Anino, I have to ask, right, when it comes to the corporate level, right, you're working at the Davos level, how do we make sure companies remain committed to women in conflict zones? And maybe what are some of the barriers that remain today in 2026?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to start to say a big thank you, Women for Women International, having me here, Delaney, Thelma and Lema, your amazing words. Thank you very much. And 100 Women at Davos is delighted to be a partner. And do excuse me, I have a bit of a cold, hence the rasp voice. You see, when we look at peace and security, it's been very much been in that, in a space which has not been the space of business, of the private sector, looked at as separate. However, peace is the bedrock of economic development, of social stability, and therefore it is totally interlinked. And when you have businesses that are operating in fragile contexts, they are there to make a profit. And profit, right, isn't something that is separate from the context. And therefore, organizations need to be clear. I think over the years, we have seen that it is, and this is when we talk about Davos, the importance of organizations and private sector in terms of the issues that we face in our world. They are part of the fabric of the world, of society, and also have a responsibility. The last thing we want is for private sector to be part of the problem and to exacerbate the problem. And so the three things really that a private sector should be looking at, and one is that economic context. And when we talk about women, how do they make it more, how can women be more, can be part of the economic system? So for example, you know, the economic side of things, wages, flexibility, in situations where the job can be remote or to some extent remote, are they providing those digital tools, for example? There's also the aspect of advocacy. The private sector has a power, right, and the economic power, and they work with governments, you know, all around the world, is how are you advocating for the right policies? So it's important that the private sectors, or the private sector does that as well. It is actually, if you look at it, it's actually an economic opportunity. If you have a vibrant, you know, social context, if you have a vibrant and growing economy, then there's actually more for, you know, businesses to do, and therefore it should no longer be looked at as something that is separate, something that is government or something that is international development organizations or the UN, but that businesses actually have a responsibility towards society. And one of the important things, especially in the private sector, in the workplace as well, is, you know, policies to do with harassment. Not only should the policies be there, very often they're there, but how are they actually implemented, and how do you keep women safe? How do you operate when there's fragility? Obviously, if something happens, what exactly is in place? You know, what are those sort of steps that organizations do to protect staff, for example? When there's a crisis, when the crisis, you know, abates a little bit, bringing women back into the economy, and bearing in mind, and we've talked about it, that women are central to, you know, peace and security, central to societal progress, central to stability. It is actually, that should actually be a target for businesses, actually, in order that they have a context. One thing that businesses don't like in private sector, we do not like uncertainty. We don't like when we can't see what is happening. And women are certainly a channel for bringing in stability and a context that is actually more viable for everybody, businesses, people, governments, etc.
Thank you. I want to be mindful, I have more questions, but I actually want to sort of open it up to the floor. If you all have any questions for our esteemed panelists, to the point of not talking at, but with, we do have a microphone or several. So if you have a question, feel free to lift your hand. We have one in the back. If you can please state your name, where you're from, and offer your question.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon. My name is Diakoumba Gassama. I'm from Senegal. I have had the pleasure to be a little person at the AU Commission when a certain international CEO was trying to get the heads of states of Africa to care. I now work for the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation in Silicon Valley, and I heard the plead of our colleague from Humanity United. And my question is actually for Trisha. Trisha, in private US philanthropy, we used to be at the forefront of funding peace and security. And there was a moment, I joined philanthropy from activism 5 years ago. And the first thing I said when I arrived in Silicon Valley and I saw all the programs, I said, where is the portfolio for peace and security? And said, oh, we don't do that anymore. And I said, why? And then I heard that it's because people felt that it was too risky, it was taking too long, you invest and then something happened, etc. And can you please share more with us in the fields and with the partners that you have? Do you feel that the events of the past 5 years have convinced maybe people to change? Because both the MacArthur Foundation, the Hewlett Foundation, OSF, we used to be at the top, and now we fund civic space, health, education, without realizing that all this doesn't matter if there's no peace. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I can speak as an individual involved in philanthropy, and it's very important to me. I feel like the current political situation has made a lot of people turn more towards working with global organizations. They're just, like you were saying, perhaps a little nervous or unsure of how to get started in a way that's not going to bring a backlash in any way. So I feel like Women for Women has such a great story and could reach out maybe more to individuals, because in my experience, as I've hosted events, bringing along friends and family and telling them about the work Women for Women does, once people hear about the good work, my experience traveling to Rwanda, the people I met there, once they hear that you can write letters back and forth and have that deep personal connection and feel like in some small way you actually are making a difference, then people will get involved. And I think that's what's really important about the Women for Women program, is that you get that personal connection. And maybe in a world right now where we feel like who am I to make a difference? You can make a difference as an individual. And as we've lost government funding and funding from other areas, perhaps we need to target all of those individuals who are fed up and want to do something to bring about change. And Women for Women is one of the ways that you can do that.
Thank you. We've got a mic coming. If you can say your name, where you're from, and concisely ask your question, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. My name is Dr. Shola Moshogbamimu. I'm based in London. My question is for the panel. I don't think we are addressing the elephant in the room, ladies and gentlemen. In the world that we live in right now, where we are quite frankly being led by the nose, by men who, in the name of God, do not have the interest of peace or women or DEI at the center of anything they do. We can talk about funding. We can talk about all of these peace building solutions. All of them are great. What I want to know from you ladies is, how do you navigate today's world to achieve the same goals you've been seeking for the last 25 years in the world that we face in with men like Donald Trump?
Thank you for your question. Dr. Anino, let's begin with you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Shola? I can't. No. Okay. It's fine. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Shola. And this actually bridges what Tricia has said, and in my work and what I've found. And Tricia was talking about when people see impact, right, and that moves them to take action. Now, what we are seeing in our world, and that is clear, it's starting. It'll take a while, but what we can see is women. We're talking about women who are in conflict zones, but I'd like to talk about women who are in business and who are in leadership. And what we are seeing now are women in business who have been in business right? And who are now moving and saying, or rather, that they want to be an impact. So I give an example. At the UN General Assembly last year, we had, and I think you were there, Dr. Shola, actually, we had a UN Women's Leadership Network event on women, peace and security, which was a private event. And as 100 Women at Davos, we were asked to invite, members of our community. I actually didn't realize that so many women in the private sector would come. In fact, I was downstairs and I had to leave early, and I had to actually call up to say, please, can you let more women in? Our women were right there. So what we're actually seeing is that women in business, women of means, are now saying that, look, we need to do something. We need to make change. And I think that is a channel that we need to exploit and we need to explore. It doesn't deal with the political situation itself, but it deals with a power and a force which I believe is not quite, I believe that is huge. And when we see the amount of funding that is going to move into the hands of women into the next, by 2030, I can't remember it, it's how many trillion or hundreds of millions of dollars, right? There is a lot of money that women are going to be in control of in a few years to come. And I feel that they're going to be making decisions which are different to the decisions that we see being made in today's world.
Maria?
No, Dr. Shola, very good question. Let's address the elephant. Because let me tell you, I live in DC, and one of my main roles is I used to lead the policy team, and we used to do a lot of advocacy on the importance of peace building, investing in peace building with Congress. So we would really do a lot of advocacy on that. And we always had bipartisan support. But everything, and I think it's also us who do a lot of advocacy in DC, we were only talking to ourselves. Because when they dismantled USAID infrastructure and all these programs, there was no outrage. There was no outrage outside of Washington, D.C. If you came to D.C. and had coffee, it was miserable because we felt the impact of what these cuts mean to the communities we serve. But when you go outside of Washington, D.C., the outrage wasn't there. The surprise and shock that you are completely gutting these programs that invest in peace building, it wasn't there. As someone who does advocacy, the realization and the mistake we made is we were only talking to ourselves. We need to go back one-on-one and talk to the community and the grassroots on the importance of peace building. When you talk to someone far off who's not in DC, maybe in Durham, in North Carolina, talk to them about the importance of peace building, then they can be able to push and challenge members of Congress why we need to invest in peace building. So that actions that even happen in DC where they are completely gutting institutions like that, they can be outraged. But that outrage was not there. We sat and just talked to ourselves. We did not mobilize. And I think now we're having that fundamental question is we need to change our advocacy ways. We need to bring along the ordinary American to understand the importance of investing in these programs, the importance of peace building. If you invest in peace building in Sudan, what does that mean for me, who's seated in, let's say, Michigan? What does that mean for me? So I think if we are talking about the elephant in the room, even us who've been doing this work and doing this advocacy on the importance of investing in it, we need to go outside. And Lema made a very good conversation, is the dialogue. We're only talking to ourselves. We need to talk to those who we don't normally talk to. We need to talk to those across political spectrums because we all realize the importance and we all see the chaos that war is doing to us, the impact that it's having on each one of us. So it's important to go back to the drawing board and have those one-on-one conversations with the ordinary American. I'm talking from the American perspective, but I'm from Uganda, but I understand the importance of having that grassroots conversation on why this is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I'd like to end by asking you all a question. They always say hindsight is 20/20, right? And when there's this much wisdom in the room, I always like to ask if you could go back to yourself before you started investing in Women for Women, before you began this work. Maybe what would you say? What might you do differently? Trisha, why don't you start for us?
Before 2002,
If that's the year for you.
what would I have done differently? I would have started sooner. I mean, it's such an important and meaningful program, and I would have tried to maybe spread the word more, get out there more. And you were talking about ordinary Americans. I think there is outrage, but the outrage is around our kitchen table. It's in our living room, and people are afraid to get out there and talk to their friends about it because you don't know the response you're going to get if you bring up certain subjects. But I think that outrage, in a grassroots sort of way, we need to start having that dialogue more with each other, spreading the word, getting people to know there are ways to support peace-building efforts. And I just would have done it sooner, and I'm definitely planning on continuing to do it for years to come.
Thank you. Maria.
I've been working at Humanity United now 8 years. It's a peace-building foundation. And to be honest, when I saw the data and the figures that only 1.9% of funding goes to women, I realized, and I think what I would want to do going forward is I need to collaborate and mobilize with our peers in philanthropy. Humanity United alone cannot do this. We have to do it together with our peers, with Women for Women International. Let us mobilize our peers and emphasize the importance. My sister, who is also in philanthropy, and saying that that program does not exist. How can we work together? I think for me, going forward, I'm like, if you're in philanthropy and we're doing this, we value this, we need to organize. We can't only just be that grant maker and doing grants. Let's organize amongst ourselves and move resources. So that the next time I have the privilege of sitting here, I will not be talking about those low numbers, but at least let me say, we organized and we were able to move resources. And we were able to collectively get that outrage that we need to invest in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Doctor.
I certainly go with Tricia, who would have started earlier. As a student of economics, monetary economics, went into banking, did banking, corporate banking with Citibank for many years, another bank. I didn't realize the underrepresentation of women in fields, in entrepreneurship, in finance, in all of that, because my lived experience was the norm. And so there didn't seem to be anything odd in it. I wrote my PhD or my doctorate, which when I look back at it today, I don't think that there's one word. It's about financing entrepreneurs. I don't think there's one word, not even a case study, about women, about gender. Even though I ran a seminar on women business owner seminars for many years, but there was nothing in that. All my work would have had a gender lens from day one, without a doubt.
Please join me in thanking our panel with a round of applause. Thank you, ladies, so much. Thank you. And as you all know, it is important to have you here tonight. There is another person who really wanted to be here but could not make it, Zainab Salbi, co-founder of Women for Women International. But lucky us, we've got a special video, so let's take a look.
I couldn't be prouder of Women for Women International and its leadership and its all of its teams and staff all over the world. Honestly, when I started Women for Women International with Amjad Atallah back in 1993, never thought that we will still have wars 33 years later, let alone live in a chaotic moment in time and in history. But the existence of Women for Women International and knowing that there are millions of women mobilized to listen to other women on the forefront of conflict areas who are doing something about it, to support them and to amplify their voices gives me hope. In such time, in today's time, many of us are feeling in despair. What can I do in such a moment of chaos? But there's so much we can do, so much, because the women at the forefront of different conflicts are not sitting idle. They're doing everything possible to support their lives, to their families, to keep life going, to bring hope. And it is really about us. Do we want to join them and share with them our resources and our hope and what we have? Or do we want to sit idle, just mourning the moment? I choose hope. I choose to be part of Women for Women International. I choose to be part of spreading the hope and featuring what women are doing around the world to bring hope and to bring peace and safety to this world. It is possible. Never despair, my sisters, never despair. It is possible. I have seen and witnessed the worst from my own home country to many of the countries that I worked in, both during my tenure at Women for Women International and after, and I continue to be optimistic. But that optimism comes because women like you and I and many others, and the wonderful leadership and team of Women for Women International who are showing up, standing up, and doing everything to listen, to support, and to amplify women's voices and women's leadership worldwide. Blessed Women's Month, and safe one.
A virtual thank you to Zainab. I now want to invite Amjad Attallah to the stage, who is Women for Women International's co-founder and international board member. He is a long-standing advocate for human rights. His leadership and support have helped advance Women for Women's mission to stand alongside women survivors of war and amplify their voices. Please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Ramadan Kareem to anybody who is commemorating the month. I am the co-founder of Women for Women, along with Zainab. I'm very, very grateful that I had the opportunity to meet Zainab and to be with her on this journey. She's one of the most courageous and most passionate people I've ever met. And she is, as many of you, if you know her, you know she's a refugee from Iraq. She came to the United States, and she had lived through the war that started after Iraq invaded Iran. And that war was a horrible 8-year World War I style bloodfest. It was horrible. She lived through that, and she brought that lesson with her here. And we both learned about Bosnia as that war was happening at the same time. And she neither of us knew there was a country called Bosnia and Herzegovina. And she very immediately recognized that there's no us and them. There's just us. What's happening in Bosnia could have happened in Iraq. It could happen anywhere. If it could happen in Europe, in the middle of Europe, there wasn't any place that it wouldn't happen. And so we needed to stop it there. And we went to Croatia together. We traveled along the front line. We met with women, and when Zainab just spoke about listening, and we just listened. We went to the refugee camps, we talked to survivors of the camps, and we listened to them, and we asked them what they wanted. And 1 year after that, Zainab actually went into Sarajevo during the siege. The war was still going on, and started our first program with a Bosnian music teacher, Frida Musanovic, who was our first country director. And that set the tone for everything that we did after that. We've always listened to the people on the ground. We've always had local leadership. We've always learned, and we've always had these countries, the women in these countries, work with us in the other countries that we're working in, because their lessons are far more valuable. The lessons of a woman in Rwanda who survived the genocide is far more valuable. The first people to support our work in Palestine were our Bosnia office. The first people to go into Ukraine to help in Ukraine were our people in our Bosnia office, because they recognized, again, that there's not an us and a them. There's just us. War is the great destroyer. It robs from all of us, and it takes us down to the bottom. Even people who profit from it, they lose their humanity and their soul. They just don't realize it until a little bit later. Women are the great equalizer. They're the ones who recreate the societies, and they recreate national futures. Zainab said that she chooses hope. I choose hope too. it's hard sometimes, but the reason I also choose hope, I remember the words of a Croatian journalist who survived the war in Bosnia. And he said that the war was horrific because people he thought were his friends and his colleagues turned out to be monsters, turned out to be people who were willing to commit the worst crimes. But it was amazing because he said, I never realized how many wonderful human beings there were on this planet. And I never would have known them, but I knew them through the war because they were the ones who were risking their lives to give a helping hand to a stranger. And those gems that for me, the great gratitude I carry every day is that Women for Women has introduced me to the most remarkable people who are gems. Tonight, we take a moment to recognize the individuals and partners whose commitment has helped advance the mission of Women for Women International and strengthen the global movement for women, peace, and security. Their leadership, generosity, and advocacy remind us that meaningful change is made possible through collective action and steadfast support. To help us present these awards, I'd like to invite three more gems, members of the Women for Women International community to join me on stage. George Biddle, International Board Member, Muna Malik, member of the U.S. Board of Advisors, and Yasmin Hassan, International Board Member. Each of them will present awards recognizing an individual leader, a corporate partner, and a philanthropist for their contributions to advancing women's leadership, peace, and security, and for their support of Women for Women International. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
Thank you, Amjad. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we open our award ceremony with the Individual Impact Award, an honor reserved for someone whose personal dedication and contributions have profoundly shaped the work of Women for Women International. We have partnered with this amazing woman for almost 2 decades. She is truly a force of nature and a fierce advocate for unleashing the power of women globally. She was at the genesis of our Women's Opportunity Center in Rwanda, working with our founder, Zainab Salbi, to turn an empty lot of land into an award-winning center where women build their own social and economic power. Through her contributions and at her urging, we proved that our holistic Stronger Women, Stronger Nations program strengthens women's voices and their influence within their households and communities, and increases their ability to earn and save income. Results she enabled us to confirm through an independent evaluation conducted by Johns Hopkins University. Across our many years of partnership with her and Bloomberg Philanthropies, where she founded the Women's Economic Development Network, we have reached and strengthened hundreds of thousands of women globally. I think the number is 615,000 to be precise. It is my enormous privilege to honor this remarkable individual whose vision, commitment, and partnership stand at the heart of these achievements. Please join me in celebrating the recipient of our Individual Impact Award, the extraordinary Verna Eggleston. Please come up, Verna.
You can. When people say those things, in whatever way they say them about what I've done, I sit and pause, and I don't think that they're talking about me necessarily, so it took me a moment to get here. I want to thank the Board of Women for Women International, its executive director and CEO and president and whatever they're calling you, and warrior. Thelma, thank you so, so much. And the women who do the work every single day, your staff, and all the people who are involved.
and my good friend who is not here and journeying, but Mary Zients, who kind of pulled us in at Bloomberg Philanthropies into this. And I had an opportunity to travel with Zainab Salbi. And we have been supporting Women for Women International at Bloomberg Philanthropies now for 18 years. And so when we talk about the journey of philanthropy and the participation of philanthropy, I think about what Zainab taught us. Zainab taught me the language so that it could merge with the language that I had already learned. She talked about decision-making power. And the two of us sat to talk with Mr. Bloomberg, a man, to understand what decision-making power meant for a woman. And he then challenged us both to come up with a criteria for monitoring and measuring when someone has reached that power and what happens. And what happens is that women can then decide to send their kids to school without a negotiation with what I believe to be the CEO of her corporation, being family. And she can get health care and food and these different types of things on her own. And then we move to economic independence as a way. And again, sitting with Mr. Bloomberg to understand that once you have economic independence, you have the power to make a decision. And my first journey with Zainab was in Congo, where I watched women, as you would suggest, my sister Lamar, sit in council in a circle, which Zainab insisted on, and make very strategic plans how they were going to make their way through militia. And the woman who would be most frail and infirmed would be in the middle, and the one with the most strength will be in the front. And me from New York, I was scared to death. And so I would tell you, thank you. But who really deserves all of that are those women who, believe it or not, have far surpassed us. Because if something happens today, we wouldn't know which direction to go. These women get up every morning thinking about something happening and have already mapped out the direction to go. And so maybe one day we'll be where they are. And we can get ahead of what's coming, as opposed to remaining in the misery of what's already here. They know how to do this. That's what keeps us at Bloomberg Philanthropy funding it, because they've surpassed anything we could do. They've far gone beyond anything we could think, and we're letting them lead the way. I close by saying I just reached my 7th decade. I've done this work. I've done this work for 52 years. And so the question I ask you all tonight, with all of your wisdom and all of your knowledge and in all of your courage, will you be there for me when it's my time?
Hi, good evening. Sending peace and blessings to all of you. It's an honor to be here on such an incredible evening. As we continue with our award presentations with a Corporate Impact Award, an honor reserved for a company whose leadership, values, and sustained commitments have significantly strengthened the work of Women for Women International. Through this partnership, women survivors of war have accessed life-changing training in health, human rights, business skills, and community support networks in countries including Iraq, Rwanda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The company we honor tonight has invested in multi-year efforts that combine financial support, employee engagement, and global brand activations to raise vital funds and awareness to marginalized women. Their contributions, exceeding $1.18 million since 2020, have helped women become successful entrepreneurs, expand their livelihoods, and inspire hope in some of the world's most challenging environments. It is now my privilege to announce the recipient of this year's Corporate Impact Award, Jimmy Chu. Jimmy Chu's North American president, Jamie Nguyen, is here tonight to accept the award on behalf of Jimmy Chu.
Good evening, everyone. I am so excited to be here. Thank you, Women for Women International, and thank you to Thelma and the extraordinary speakers this evening. It is a privilege to be here among so many leaders advancing the women, peace, and security agenda. Jimmy Chu is deeply honored to receive this award. For our brand, empowering women is not a campaign. It is a commitment grounded in our values and embedded in the work we do globally. Over the past 6 years, our partnership with Women for Women International has supported more than 1,400 women survivors of war to rebuild their livelihoods and reclaim their independence. Their courage inspires everything this recognition represents. Women for Women's impact over 30 years, especially in the most challenging contexts, is a testament to the power of sustained, community-centered support. We are proud to stand alongside you. As the world marks 25 years of this world peace and security agenda, this moment reminds us that corporate partnerships can and must play an active role in advancing gender equality, economic opportunity, and long-term peace. Thank you for this honor. Jimmy Chu looks forward to continuing our work together to ensure more women have the tools, the resources, and the networks to shape the futures they so deserve. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I am honored to close out our presentations with the Philanthropic Impact Award. This is an honor reserved for someone whose personal generosity, commitment, and long-standing belief in the mission of Women for Women International have profoundly strengthened our work and expanded what is possible for the women we serve. I know we heard Lema say, we didn't need money, we could have no water and no soda, and we can do all this stuff. But and I also heard how little funding is going to women-led organizations, and particularly to women survivors of war. And it's like individuals like the one we are going to honor today. I don't even need to introduce her. Like, I have all this write-up, but she's already introduced herself because, and what I heard her say right now, I would have started earlier, I would have done more, I would have gotten more people involved. And so I want to say philanthropy is not just about giving money, it's about showing up, it's about caring, it's about writing to 30 women, it's also about taking your daughters to Rwanda to get the next wave of philanthropists involved in this work. So it's my honor today to give the Philanthropic Impact Award to Tricia Rorty. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin. It's such an honor and privilege to be here with all of you tonight. And I know I'm probably speaking for everyone in this room when I say, how can you leave here and not feel inspired by all of these incredible people who have told us their stories and have shared with us their ideas of how we can continue the incredible work of Women for Women. And tonight I'm so honored to receive this award. This is just something that has been so important to my life that I share with my children, and I hope to inspire future generations to focus on philanthropic work. And tonight I would like to dedicate my award to those 30 women who took the time to write with me, share their stories, and share their joy, because I may have made a small impact in their life, but it is those women who changed my life forever. And I'm just so proud to be a part of Women for Women. Thank you.
Let's do one more round of applause for all the awardees. Well, I'd now like to invite our host and Women for Women International CEO, Dr. Thelma Ekiyor, to share her reflections and closing remarks.
Good evening. Good evening. Wow. I would like to do 3 things, maybe 3.5 before I start. If you work for Women International, please stand up. Please give my colleagues a round of applause. I threw this at them and see what they've done. So I'd really like to acknowledge the team that worked on this. Particularly, can everyone please give Alan a round of applause? Alan, now you can sleep. Okay, the next thing I'd like to do, you saw some of them, but if you're on any of Women for Women's boards, can you please stand up to be acknowledged? When I told my friends I have 4 boards, they're like, what? But incredible people, extremely supportive. And as I get to know them more and more, and I just said to Rima, I need you to do this. And the answer was yes. There was no conversation. And look at everything they've done. The next set of people I'd like to acknowledge, if you support Women for Women as a sponsor or anything, can you please rise to be acknowledged? Thank you. The amazing thing about our supporters and our sponsors and our donors, they don't want to be acknowledged. And I'm like, no, we need to do this. And I just saw you, Laurie. I'd like to acknowledge my predecessor. Please give Laurie, stand up and leave. Where I'm from, we honor people who've gone before us. And so I honor you, I honor Zainab. I didn't just drop from the sky to do this. People have laid the foundation, so I'm very grateful. Thank you for coming. I thank all our speakers, all our keynotes. It's always the drama queen. Knowing I hate drama. But, you know, Lema and I are such good friends, and I begged her not to put my name in her book because I said, now everyone is going to know everything we did behind the scenes. But what did she do? She put my name in her book. But when I think about 27 years ago, those 2 young women in West Africa, and when I said, I need us to start a Women in Peace Building Network because I'd seen everything that had happened in all the countries that we had worked in. And as Lema said, very fearless, going from country to country, recruiting women to be part of this network. I think by the time we were done, we were 3,000 women. And, you know, we were doing this not thinking of awards or anything. We just hated what was happening in our region. And I was fresh from studying in Canada and the US, and I just felt like, no, you know, this cannot be happening. And that is what attracted me to Women for Women, the fact that Amjad and Zainab also started it based on this cannot be happening. We need to do something. I think the role of a CEO is like being in a relay race. You take the baton passed to you, and you run your leg of the race, hopefully faster than the previous person. But you must all share the goal of getting to the finish line. I took the baton of being Women for Women's International CEO at a most turbulent time. Those of us who work in this field know the issues. You've heard it today. It's actually the worst time since the 90s. In addition to all the things that are happening to women in conflict, women and girls are being trafficked in unprecedented numbers. Poverty in women in conflict zones is intense. And it's against this backdrop that we're talking about 25 years of women, peace, and security. There is now an open, deliberate, vocal opposition to the global women's rights agenda. As we sit here today, here in New York, there are parallel meetings to defund, delegitimize, and divide the women's rights community. Feminism, gender, diversity, equality are all under attack. And many organizations are dropping important language that has framed this discourse for 25 years. Unfortunately, the anti-women's rights movement is very well funded. And even more unfortunate, more organized than we are. We still ask questions like, why do we have convenings? We need convenings. The people who are sane in this climate need to get together. And when we're not getting together, the people who are insane are getting together, they're well-funded, and they're changing the agenda. As UN Women has said, almost half of women's rights organizations will be shut down this year. Many in the trenches that we know personally are forced to modulate. They have no choice if they want funding. And that is the difference with Women for Women International. Our voice is clear. We're more resolute. We're not changing our mandate, values, or focus. We stand with women in conflict unapologetically, regardless of race, religion, or location. We believe that our intervention, Stronger Women, Stronger Nations, is more important than ever. We must accompany women to be stronger. However, at a time of heightened suspicion and the rise of autocratic governments, we need to be clear that we are not women's saviors. The reason Lema and I succeeded, as she said, was that every country we went to, we prioritized them before ourselves. We don't know better than the women in conflict zones. As I run this with this baton, this is what we've learned in 25 years, that we need to be prepared. We were not prepared then. That's why we had no money. I didn't enjoy having no money, Lema. We need to be prepared. We need to be proactive in supporting women in conflict zones. We need to be better organized to intervene way before the violence stops. We need to understand the eventual goal of our work is systems change. If we're not changing systems, we'll be back here talking about the same issues. If we don't use our convening power, which Maria talked about, leverage, influence to change systems, then poverty will continue, gender-based violence will continue. And that is why going into the future, you'll see Women for Women prioritize systems change even more. This is why the partnership that we've signed with the African Union Development Agency and NEPAD, is Jessica in the room? I don't know, didn't see her. Jessica, please can you give African Union a round of applause? We have 4 offices in Africa. One is a sister office, but we can't scale our work alone. We need partners. And the African Union can take us to every single country on the continent. And they're already talking about the things that we can do together. We need to reignite one of the original pillars of Women for Women International, visible solidarity. I remember when I talked to Amjad and I said, what did you want to achieve? And he said, women in one part of the world will stand up and speak for other women. We need that now, at a time when so many women are voiceless, And so we're really looking for the Nobel Women's Initiative has invited Women for Women to join their delegation. And we're actually talking about organizing parallel peace processes that will, and of course, Lema will be the fighter in front, the parallel peace processes so that we can bring these voices to the fore. And that is work that I'm really excited about. We need to break the hold of poverty on women. The work that you've heard about in Rwanda, the work that Bloomberg Philanthropies has helped us do is incredible. At a time when people projectize women's lives, you go in and you do work for 2 weeks and you say you have changed a woman's life. What an insult. If you want to support women, it's about long-term investments. We need to work very closely with companies and brands. And that's why Jimmy Choo had to be acknowledged today. And that's why we formed this partnership with 100 Women at Davos to make sure that the issues that we talk about are right in the middle of women with resources. Because truly, it has to be first, women for women. If women with money invest in women, then we can change the conversation. The war in Iran, if I can believe CNN, says it's $1 billion a day. If I had gone to any of these people and said, give me 10% to work on women, no one would have answered me. So we can't look at the same sources for the solutions to these problems. We need to look at new sources. We need to break out of this idea that we cannot work with government. The naive Thelma thought so, but if you want to do any real work now, multi-sectoral collaboration is the way forward. Most importantly, we have learned that since the opposition to our work is organized, we need to work well with organized coalitions of like-minded people. Before coming to New York, our office in Germany organized for me to speak to the largest investment bank in Germany. And they asked me, what more can we do? And I bring the same answer that I gave them tonight. Support Women for Women to be more proactive, more nimble, more influential, more effective in our work. We have the experience, we have the credibility, we have the guts. When everybody is modulating, we will stay true. And at the end of this season, if you support us, then those who really mean what they say will stand and be counted. I ask you to support us to be true to our mission. Support us to keep our programs alive in Iraq, in Palestine, in South Sudan, in DRC, in Afghanistan, where my colleagues are working in spite of drones, in spite of checkpoints. 2 colleagues were kidnapped in South Sudan, and they came back to work the next day. Support us to be ready to intervene, to accompany the women in Iran when they will undoubtedly be ready to build their lives at some point. Lastly, support women to build wealth. Poverty is the enemy. As long as women are poor, there's no agency, there's no decision making. And so as we roll out our social investment plans, all we need is for you to give one woman $200. I met women in Rwanda who told me, you gave us $200, now we have $50,000 in the bank. I had to turn to my colleague and I said to her, do you have 50,000 in your bank? But that is the power of Women for Women. I love my job. I love my job. I know how to do my job because I was doing it without the lights. And so now what we're looking for are people who believe like we do to do this work with us. I hope you've been inspired, but I hope we've also challenged you to be part of this journey so that in 25 years, we will not be talking about the numbers that we're talking about today. Thank you for honoring our invitation.
Dr. Thelma, thank you so much. And can you just stay standing and give yourselves a round of applause? Thank you. Thank you for being current, paying attention, being curious, and staying connected. I don't have much to leave you with. I want to lead with some housekeeping. We do have Ramadan containers in the back for those who are fasting. I want to remind you all, you can stay connected with Women for Women online. That agenda, keep that. You can stay connected with all the speakers as well. I'm at Simply Zinkley. It has been a pleasure to be your host. Now I have the delight of saying you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. We've got 10 minutes for you to mingle. Please feel free to take photos in the back and stay connected. Have a lovely night. Thank you so much.